All right, welcome into the podcast. This one's been a long time coming. He has never been on this podcast. Been close a few times. I've even been close a couple times on his podcast. But this is actually the first time we've gotten together. I'm glad we finally been able to make it happen. He is CHGO's own Nicholas Moreano, and he joins me now. Nicholas, Bill Zimmerman, how you doing?
Bill, like you said, it's been a long time coming. I'm so glad they were able to do this, get a nice little recap of OTAs, minicamp of the 2023 Chicago Bears.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just dive into the OTAs because, look, I think of all the overreactions we do as NFL fans, OTAs are without question the biggest, more than training camp, preseason. And those are big overreactions as well. But OTAs are the most, the pads aren't on and everything, but people still want to kind of know how people look and how everything's going. So let's not bury the lead and let's start with QB1, Justin Fields. What we heard, was those of us who weren't there a little up and down in the mini camp, but really shined on that final day, looked really good, especially in the red zone. Kind of what were your thoughts watching Justin Fields perform here over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I would say that Justin Fields had more good days than bad. And I think the second day of minicamp was when there was a lot of talk about how Justin Fields did on that particular practice. And it was a mixed bag of, good plays, missed throws, interceptions, really good completions. But I think that's like you put it into perspective there, Bill. Like every throw is analyzed way too much than it should be, especially in mini camp and OTAs. But I think what's been really impressive with Justin Fields thus far, and you've heard it from, the press conferences, how quickly that chemistry with DJ Moore has come along. And it's really in a short amount of time, but you're seeing the different types of throws too that Justin Fields is trying in these OTAs and mini camp where there are two defenders in the area. But Justin Fields still has, the confidence and conviction to throw a pass in between Jalen Johnson and Elijah Hicks and have that ball just drop down into DJ Moore's hands. And then there are throws where, hey, he's got to loft it over a defender, and then it goes into DJ Moore's, just his vicinity. And I think that's what's been really cool and good to see early on from Justin Fields is that we're seeing different types of throws. We're seeing them go to DJ Moore. And he's only been on the team a couple of months, but you're seeing that chemistry really blossom so far.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. And I don't think anyone needs Justin Fields to have the, let's just call it the gunslinger Brett Favre attitude of just chucking it in a triple coverage and just trusting his arm flagrantly. I don't think we're looking for that. But I do think the one thing that Justin Fields did not do much of last year was really challenge defenses in terms of really trying to thread needles, things like that. Now, was that Justin Fields having a lack of confidence in himself? Was that Justin Fields having a lack of confidence in his weapons? I think that can absolutely be made because we saw at times when he did try and push the envelope with some of those throws that the receivers weren't where they were supposed to be, dropped the ball. There were obviously issues there. So I think we don't want to see Justin Fields shoot up in the interceptions, obviously, this season, but a little bit more. Obviously, we know the intermediate and the short throws is something he needs to work on, and I'm going to ask you about that next. But trusting himself and trusting his guys enough to make NFL level throws. I'm not saying they need to be, miraculous throws, but those NFL level throws, because we know NFL open is not Big Ten open. And seeing him do that, and obviously OTAs is a place to practice that, and you're saying it looks like he has been pushing in that direction.
Yeah, he definitely has, Bill, and you talked about the intermediate throws, the short throws. Well, we got a good glimpse of that in the last day of minicamp because they're primarily working in the red zone, these tight windows where you need to be precise with each throw that you make, and all those passes went to receivers not named DJ Moore, and I think that's one of the encouraging things that we were able to see down there in that last day of minicamp before the Bears kind of broke for their summer break, so to speak. But you saw the tight window throws to Robert Tonyan, to Cole Kmet. And I think arguably the one throw that I think is going to stand out in terms of what we're going to see from Fields this year is a touchdown to Dante Pettis where he breaks the pocket and he gets into the open field. We know Fields can do that. He's going to have the opportunity to do that a lot this season. But Dante Pettis is covered up by Kyler Gordon. It's really good initial coverage by Gordon. But Dante Pettis sees his quarterback break the pocket and adjust his route immediately. and Fields trusts that connection, throws a high ball. Dante Pettis goes up to catch it, gets 2 feet in bounds. But those are the type of plays where they're improvised, and now Fields is extending the play, and it's the receiver having to make an adjustment to get open to potentially make a big gain out of nothing initially. So that was really encouraging to see that Fields was able to have that chemistry with some of now are the back end receivers, like a Dante Pettis, Equanimeous St. Brown, but was able to do that. And then getting the tight ends involved in the red zone. Like Robert Tonyan, he moves like he almost looks like the number kind of throws me off, Bill, with the 18 now. He kind of looks like a big wide receiver, but he's making catches in that tight, condensed version of the red zone. So it's nice to see that he's, making these passes to Cole Kmet, Robert Tonyan, getting those guys involved and really just mixing it up a bit. So I like that the Bears, for whatever reason, didn't have DJ Moore a part of that part of the practice on day 3. And Matt Eberflus said it shouldn't be anything too concerning or anything like that. But Fields had to go to everyone outside of number 2. And you saw the production. He threw a lot of touchdowns that day and had his best day of minicamp, even when DJ Moore wasn't out on the field.
Yeah, and look, this isn't a big deal, but it was just something I really liked. When they mic'd up Justin Fields for practice, and I understand that was just in good fun, but the one thing that I really liked seeing is, and this isn't to bag on the guy he's a good guy, but Mitch Trubisky to me was loved by his teammates. Mm-hmm. But I always kind of felt like Mitch Trubisky was loved like a big brother loves a little brother. Like I always kind of felt like they just wanted to put their arm around him, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And kind of the way Fields was controlling the practice field, coming up to guys, even if it was lighthearted, fun stuff. Like, I think some of the negatives in terms of Justin Fields' personality as a rookie is that people that didn't know him too well kind of gave him that aloof category that he wasn't going to be like in the huddle and in the locker room and in with his teammates. And I think what you just saw, and again, like I said, I'm not trying to blow this too big of a deal. It's just a mic'd up practice. But I think you really saw kind of the Justin Fields, the leadership and the personality, and why this team gravitates him as much as they do.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, Bill. There were a couple of plays where the media was allowed to be in the end zone that the Bears offense was going into. And there was one play where he scrambles out going to his left. And we all know that Justin Fields, if he turns the corner, he's going to beat you to the edge. And he's kind of jawing at Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker. He's like, that's a touchdown all day. And he's kind of challenging both those guys. And Jaquan Brisker like, you better go out of bounds next time. But I think that's what Justin Fields brings when he's on the football field. There's a level of competitiveness that you need to show in each and every play, or he's going to show you that he's the best athlete out there. And on that specific play, it would have been close. I think Justin would have dove and maybe would have extended the ball into the end zone, but he's challenging every defender on every single play. But the defenders obviously have a respect towards him and know that he's capable of, turning nothing into, something spectacular. But he does have a presence around him. And I think there were times too where Eberflus would quickly call a play after they had just run one. And you see, instead of dysfunction, you see Fields commanding the huddle like you were just talking about, getting people set. And all they did was run a simple run play to, I think, Deontay Foreman at the time. But it was precise, it was well executed, and they got the play off despite the quick change of events from Matt Eberflus. So I think you're just seeing a more comfortable Justin Fields in year 2 of Luke Getsy's offense.
Yeah, and I really, really hope that's the case because, quarterbacks really, when they become elite quarterbacks, and I'm talking Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, like those Hall of Fame level quarterbacks, when I've talked to coaches and had opportunities like that, like they run practices, like they are part of the coaching staff. Like the Broncos used to just let Peyton Manning go out there. Peyton Manning would huddle up, call plays, line up the offenses, tell people where to go, what to look for, all this stuff. He would just like run the offense, a lot of times. Aaron Rodgers would do certain things like that. Brady does certain things like that. So obviously Fields isn't supposed to do this at, 24 years of age, but as he continues to develop and hopefully is the quarterback of this team for the next 10, 12 years, that's the type of thing you want to see. You want to see Justin Fields. He's a really smart guy, and this goes well beyond, graduating from Ohio State and everything. But I really think he understands football at that next level. And I really think he could become that level of guy. But what he needs is some stability. and he needs some time to grow and learn. And that's the one thing that people always kept saying, is that Justin Fields was in his second offense in 2 years last year. That's not true. Justin Fields was in his third offense in 3 years, because it was Ohio State, Matt Nagy, and then Luke Getsy. So a little time here for him to settle in and really learn and understand the offense. I think in terms of the game slowing down and for that passing game to improve, that's where we need to see Justin, and hopefully we're starting to see some glimpses of that.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the thing is too, like, we want to also see, there was a lot of times where Justin Fields maybe wanted to take the big play shot downfield, but I think to get the most out of this offense too, it's all right to take the checkdowns. And in that second practice that had the mixed results where, did Fields have a bad day or a good day, there was a lot of checkdowns within that practice. Now, did that come because the defense dictated the throw? Justin maybe didn't see an open receiver. We can only tell you what we saw. There was a bunch of checkdowns, but that's also a good thing in terms of Justin Fields understanding what is in each and every play of this offense. Like, if the deep shot's not there, the intermediate throw's not there, well, now let me go to my third option. That's a sign of progression from Fields. So that he's going through each one of his progressions, making the right throw. And I think there was one play in the first minicamp practice where it was a great throw by Fields going to Cole Kmet. Tremaine Edmonds is in coverage, and that's a large human being to get the ball over. But Justin's looking right. He's looking at DJ Moore, not there. I think his second option may have been, I think it was Valus, but he didn't go to that option there. He goes over to the third progression, which is Cole Kmet, and it's a touch throw. Like, anywhere under, if he does not throw that ball the way he did, Tremaine Edmonds is at least getting his hand on it, but it's a perfectly thrown ball to Kmet on a corner route. And that's exactly how we're going to see Justin Fields grow in this offense. If, the defense is finally taking away DJ Moore, number two, maybe it's Cole Kmet, maybe it's not, but you can get to that next progression in the play. Then you have a quarterback that we already know can beat you with his legs. But now he shows more what he's capable of, what he's doing with his arm, which I think he's definitely capable of more. Now you have someone that you got to worry about at all levels of the defense, and that's what can make him really dangerous.
Yeah, no, well, let's talk a little bit more on the offense, but let's kind of talk about the skill positions here. Kind of give me your overall thoughts here. Obviously, there's a lot of new guys here. Running back room is really 4 running backs. Travis Homer as your fourth running back is a kind of fantastic depth there, and a lot of guys that can help in the passing game. Rashawn Johnson can help in the passing game. Obviously, Homer can as well. That's a big reason they brought him in. They got 2 legitimate pass-catching tight ends now with Tanyan in here, and really 3 wide receivers. We'll kind of see what the bottom end of that wide receiver group ends up looking like. But, obviously, the biggest complaint that a lot of Bears fans had in September of 2022 is, who is Justin Fields supposed to throw to? And it was a legitimate problem all season long, but a lot of upgrades made this year. How do you think this, skills position group on offense kind of stacks up to the rest of the league?
Yeah, well, I think now, in the rest of the league, like, look, there's a lot of, obviously, you look at some of the top offenses like Cincinnati or Kansas City, obviously they have a lot of playmakers, but the Bears have a good amount on their own. I think what the Bears did, Bill, in this offseason, getting the weapons for Justin Fields, like, there are no excuses. Like, if Justin Fields is not able to, put up numbers in the passing game, get his playmakers involved, I don't think that's a reflection on what Ryan Poles, didn't do. You got DJ Moore. You got, obviously, Darnell Mooney, who will be coming back from injury. We'll see what you get out of Chase Claypool. Robert Tonyan, I think, is going to be a nice addition. Then all the running backs you just mentioned, like, there are players on this roster that should complement Justin Fields' skill set to where he should be able to put up numbers. And, with the running back position through OTAs and minicamp, we really haven't even seen what they're capable of. We haven't seen them be able to pass block or really actually run between the tackles. So that's a group in itself that I'm really excited to see come training camp, because I think the top 3 guys at the group with Khalil Herbert, Deontay Foreman, and Rashawn Johnson, all are guys that can run in between the tackles, can read this wide zone scheme, have good vision. But what it's going to end up coming down to, which one of those guys is going to be the most consistent pass blocker to be maybe someone that gets more of the reps throughout a game. But that's a fun battle to have. I remember I asked Coach David Walker, the running backs coach, is that a problem that you don't have, I guess, the guy? He's like, never a problem. Never a problem. I've had problems where I've never had, I've even one guy. So that's a good, issue quote unquote issue to have at the running back room. Tight end, I think Robert Tonyan's a guy that, knows this offense. And when asked about what this offense really looks like, he said that it goes through the tight end with what they're able to do in the passing game and also the run blocking, which the Bears are still going to do a lot in 2023. But this group of pass catchers, running backs, even the offensive line, I think is enough now, Bill, to really see what Justin Fields can do as a complete quarterback. And we saw it too many times last season. Out of necessity, Fields had to run because that was probably the best play on the field. He's going to outrun the defense, make a guy miss and just outrun everybody. But now you do have the pass catchers in place where I think Justin Fields is going to be able to show his true skill set. And the DJ Moore move cannot be understated how important that is. Not just in terms of giving Fields a number one wide receiver, but just someone that he can lean to learn from, what defenses are actually doing out there. That was something that Fields said in his latest press conference, where this guy is played in so much, it played against so many different types of defenses and knows so much that he can, dabble into that great mind of DJ Moore and just kind of work off of him to see what he's seeing, and that will help Fields in the end. So this group of pass catchers and just overall playmakers, again, is one where there are no excuses for Justin Fields, in my opinion. He needs to go out there, utilize them. Being in year 2 of this offense, I think we really are going to see a good season from Justin Fields because he has everything in place now.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And I do tend to agree with you. And since you brought up Chase Claypool, let me ask you about Chase, because I think he's the guy getting the most attention right now from social media and Bears media, kind of general fans talking about it. Because look, last season was not what anyone hoped out of Chase Claypool. And I understand it takes a while to learn the offense, and he got banged up and missed time. But regardless, those were not the results you wanted to see, obviously. And then, we get into this year, and Justin Fields even kind of mentioned that he thought his attitude, I don't remember the exact quote, but it basically was saying it felt like his attitude was better this year and that he was kind of more mature. So that makes you think that maybe Claypool was having some other issues last year, whatever those might have been. But then, of course, Sylvie comes out here from ESPN and mentions that the Bears may not be happy with where Chase Claypool was. We know he didn't participate. He was there, but did not participate in a lot in OTAs. I don't know if you guys ever kind of got a straight answer with that, but that he's an interesting guy. And look, to me, if Darnell Mooney isn't extended this offseason, and I don't think he will be, I think Colt Kmet will be. I'm not sure about anyone else. I don't think Mooney is going to get that extension yet. I'm not saying that he's going to leave. I just think he's going to have to play out this year. Because to me, with DJ Morris getting paid, I don't think you end up paying 3 wide receivers. So Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool, to me, are kind of playing for their 2024 season. And I think Darnell Mooney obviously has the significant inside track there. So Chase Claypool may be playing for a contract, not necessarily for the Bears, but for elsewhere in his contract year. So kind of where are you with Chase Claypool expectations? Because he is a very... if you said he played 17 games, had 1,200 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns, I'd love it. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But if you said he played 8 games and had 250 yards receiving and no touchdowns, that wouldn't be shocking either. So there's a lot of variance there with Claypool. So where do you fall with him?
Yeah, I mean, those two outcomes that you put there, Bill, it's very realistic which way it could end up falling for Chase Claypool. But for me, I don't know exactly how the Bears feel about him. I would assume they really do want to see him on the field, though, right? And I'm curious to see what that offense really looks like with all 3 of those receivers healthy and in the offense. But with Chase Claypool, I really never envisioned him to be a guy that gets 1,000 yards, even when the Bears made the trade to go get him last year. And especially now with DJ Moore going to get a majority of the targets, as he should, is going to be the focal point in this offense. I just think with Chase Claypool, he needs to show, obviously you make the trade, Ryan Poles, and it was one that, 32 overall pick, right? So with Chase Claypool, the best thing for him, he needs to get onto the football field and actually be healthy to show what he's truly capable of. I think there were even times last year, still learning the offense, like you mentioned, where you want him to be able to win those 50-50 balls. But he really hasn't shown consistently that he's that kind of guy. But he is this big body receiver that you the Bears, last year liked to utilize him on some jet sweeps and things like that. But if that's the role that Chase Claypool is playing, it's just, I don't think the trade is ever going to amount to what you actually got. But for me, like, I'm keeping expectations relatively low. Like, if he goes out, puts up, let's say 700 yards receiving, gets in the end zone 5 times, it's a decent season. It is a decent season for Chase Claypool, but like, I never envisioned him to be like 100 catch guy, 100 ball, receptions, 1,000 yards. That just, it never crossed my mind for a guy like when they made that trade. But I think whatever you get from him is obviously a plus this season. And then, interesting with like the contract extensions, Cole Kmet, is definitely going to be the guy that I think the Bears go to first. And I think the Bears I know like Darnell Mooney. They really do. But just, you got to see how he comes back from this injury.
Right.
And I think him moving back into the slot will actually help him a lot in terms of his production, what he's capable of doing in this offense. So if he comes back healthy, is productive like what we saw almost 2 years ago from Mooney, now you're talking about a guy that if they're going to look between Claypool and Mooney, you almost want to think that Mooney would be the guy that they opt to give that extension to. But for Chase, it's really up in the air. Like, I want him to be successful. He has, when you look at him physically, Bill, too, it's like he's different. He is way different from everybody else. But it's just, it needs to all come together, and hopefully being another year in this offense with Justin Fields, Luke Getsy, the stars will kind of align for him to have hopefully a bounce back year and just being more comfortable in this offense.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, since we're on wide receivers here, because I actually think when we get to training camp and preseason, the bottom of the wide receivers, that conversation, that debate is going to be pretty darn interesting, because when you look at how this breaks down, let's assume the Bears keep 6 wide receivers on the 53-man roster. That is a safe bet to have. You've got the top 3 that we just talked about with Moore, Mooney, and Claypool. They're not going anywhere. Tyler Scott, they just spent a 4th-round pick on him. He is pretty much a lock on the 53. So assuming everyone is healthy, you've got those 4 guys. Then you've got 2 spots left for ESB, Velus Jones, and Dante Pettis. Now, if the Bears find a punt returner not named Dante Pettis, I think that's probably the guy who's the odd man out. But if they aren't comfortable, with the other punt returning options on their roster, and they need to keep Dante Pettis on the 53-man roster, we could see a surprising cut. And I know ESB's limited with what he can do, but he's a prototypical receiver that can block and help in that wide zone offense. And Velus Jones obviously had a pretty good final game there, but did not have the rookie year a lot of people had hoped to see. Could we see potentially a Velus Jones get cut? Could you see something like that? Would ESB be the odd man out? Again, if Pettis needs to be on this team for a punt returning situation, it's a really complicated bottom of the receiver situation for the roster.
Yeah, I think that's going to be like the most fascinating, how this 53-man roster kind of shakes out, the bottom end of the receiving core. And look, Velus Jones Jr. as a minicamp has been getting some reps now as a punt returner. I think the Bears want that to work, because if he is able to show that he can consistently do that, you feel comfortable with him doing that, then that would make a guy like Dante Pettis a little bit more expendable. But with Equanimeous St. Brown, like, that's a guy that he does a lot of good things on the football field that maybe don't get as highly recognized. The blocking is going to be a big part of what the Bears do. They're still going to run the ball a lot, but he doesn't have as much special teams experience. And now he's back. He's in the role that he should be, that 4th, 5th, 6th spot role, as opposed to the 2 or 3 last year, where the Bears put like a help wanted sign for players to come in and like help them out. So I think with Equanimeous, it does become more interesting. I think he makes a 53, but if they decide to keep Dante Pettis, in the conversation like you brought up earlier, Bill, is between ESB and Velus, I almost think they go with Velus, just because that was Ryan Poles' 3rd-round draft pick, the only wide receiver he drafted, and he does provide some special teams value, and at the kick returner position, where he showed that you can make some plays there, as opposed to Equanimeous St. Brown, where he doesn't have that special team experience, but he does, he is a good blocker on the field. It's a fascinating conversation, but if they only keep 6, and I would think Velus and Equanimeous make the roster, and Dante Pettis is the odd man out. Even though the play I was highlighting earlier, he's been showing up in minicamp and OTAs as a receiver, just a nuanced route running. So it's honestly, it's a good place for the Bears to be in. They don't know which wide receivers to keep because now there's more talent on this roster as opposed to last year. It's like you can catch a ball, you play wide receiver, you're on the team.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some interesting people getting valuable reps in key games, like late in the fourth quarter. And now they, like you said, they've got too much talent at receiver. It's a really nice turnaround to have. Before we jump off the offense, let me just ask you about the offensive line. Obviously, there's not too much to get into in OTAs. I like the fact that Darnell Wright just jumped right in and they didn't play the you've got to earn your starting position stuff. We know where that's going, and I like to see that. Cody Whitehair seems to be the center, but Lucas Patrick did definitely get reps with the ones at center. It seems to me that might be the only position that might have a little question. I would have liked to see maybe Carter get some reps there, or, see kind of where they are in terms of some of these other centers. But kind of where are you at the position? Do you get the feeling that this is Whitehair's job kind of no matter what, or is there a chance he might get bumped out if Lucas Patrick or someone has a strong training camp?
Yeah, I think this is Cody Whitehair's job to be the starting center. And with Lucas Patrick, he did get some reps, like you said, with the first team. He's also had some reps in at guard at times, but I think that's just a nice guy to have. And just to get some reps in with Justin Fields in case something happened to Cody Whitehair, at least they have that familiarity there. But Lucas Patrick will be the depth piece there. And then it's a lot different from last, OTAs and minicamp where it's just a fluctuation of guys going in and out. You didn't know who was playing where, but this front five with Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Cody Whitehair, Nate Davis, and then obviously Darnell Wright. It's a good change for the Bears to have some just stable players in place on the offensive line. I think when you look at the back end too, like a Chari Carter, he was getting some first team reps when Nate Davis wasn't here. Dieter Easelin was the second team starting center and then third team left guard. So those are guys that I like for depth pieces. And then Larry Borum is now once a starter and now probably in the right spot as a, potential swing tackle for this team. But the offensive line, it's just nice that there isn't a lot of talk about them, to be completely honest, at this point in the year. We know who's playing where and, what their roles are.
Yeah, you said, it's kind of like an umpire. You don't want to hear about the offensive line in May and June. That's not the time you want to hear about them. That's for sure. Let me ask you a little bit about rookies and how they've kind of done just kind of a broad scale between Tyreek Stevenson and I don't know how much you could maybe get from Dexter Pickens, without too much contact there, but obviously Tyler Scott on offense. How do you think the rookies performed at OTAs?
Yeah, so I think, when you look at a guy like Tyreek Stevenson, it was only a matter of time before he was going to be with the starters. And it didn't take long. I didn't think he was going to basically win the opposite starting cornerback position of Jalen Johnson without pads, but he's already done it. Kindle Vildor, the last two practices never made it onto the varsity field. They kind of split up the fields between the first team and then the second and third. Kindle Vildor stayed with the second and third stringers while it was Tyreek Stevenson and Michael Ojemudia who were like kind of the backup corners on that side. But he's been impressing. And, Justin Fields, though, has recognized when Stevenson's in the game, like, I'm going to throw the ball that way. See if Stevenson can make some plays. And there have been some touchdowns caught on that side. But I think he's a guy that obviously the coaching staff feels really comfortable with, putting him in that role right now to see how he can further grow with this starting defense. A guy like Gervon Dexter, like you said, we can't see as much right now without the pads, but one play really stood out where I'm thinking about the Bears culture. They're all about the hits principle, right? The hustle, intensity, things like that. And Gervon Dexter is the only player on the field chasing down Justin Fields on a QB keeper to the right side, where most of the players, they've kind of gone away, gone to, the next play. Gervon Dexter's running down the field, trying to go get Justin Fields. He's not going to catch him, Bill, but just seeing him down there in that effort, I think it shows how the rookie class, or especially Gervon Dexter, just bought into this very important cultural, aspect that the Bears are trying to implement each and every one of their rookies. A guy like Roschon Johnson, again, like the offensive defensive line, the running backs we haven't seen as much of, but he has worked with the second and third string, has worked at times with the first string. in terms of just, getting some passes out of the backfield. Tyler Scott, I think he's also been working up his way into the first teamers as well. We unfortunately haven't been able to see a guy like Terrell Smith, the other cornerback that the Bears have drafted. He's been sidelined due to injury. Kendall Williamson's another guy, the safety, 7th round pick, who also hasn't made a lot of plays. But I think in training camp, I'm really curious to just watch the line and see how Zach Pickens and Javon Dexter can start utilizing more of their moves, because Tevin Jenkins said they're only allowed to use the finesse kind of handwork right now. He's looking forward to seeing the bull rush technique that both those large human beings are definitely capable of. So that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing come training camp, the pads come on, how much force and how much, I think, just competition there's going to be between a guy like Tevin Jenkins or Nate Davis when they go up against some of these rookies, and see how they kind of, fare in there.
Now, let me ask you about the defensive line a little bit. We talked about it a little bit with Pickens and Dexter here. Really kind of the one area, I think, where when the dust settled with free agency and the draft, where you kind of went there and went, oh, okay, that's not where polls address. I don't know if it's necessarily from a lack of effort. I think it's just kind of the way the dice fell and the kind of the cards fell for him this particular year. I think that's probably going to be almost forced as a higher priority, maybe the top priority next season when he has his opportunities, 2 first-round picks and still having some money to spend. So I think we're going to see some changes there. But when we look at that defensive line, it's going to be interesting to see how he utilizes the pieces he has. You got someone like DeMarcus Walker, who can rush inside and play outside. Dexter is a guy who looks like he can play the 1 tech and the 3 tech. Zach Pickens, the guy, doesn't look like he's going to be able to do much from a run stop perspective this season. See if he develops into it, more of a kind of an interior pass rushing guy. And then obviously the free agents like Billings and stuff like that, where I almost wonder if we're going to see, on obvious rushing downs, if we're going to see maybe Dexter kind of playing. I don't know where Justin Jones fits in, we'll kind of see, but maybe something like Dexter playing the 3 tech with Billings and DeMarcus outside. And then on passing downs, maybe Pickens comes in with Walker on the inside. And then obviously you got, more traditional edge rushers. Maybe they'll still add an edge. I think that would be Ngakoue is a guy I think would fit really well with what they need, despite him not being able to stop the run very well. But based on who's left, I think he makes a lot of sense. How do you kind of think this defensive line is going to get utilized? Because, the linebackers, they spent a lot of money. They've got a good linebacking core. I think if Tyreek Stevenson has a good rookie year, we're going to have a pretty solid secondary here in Chicago. But I don't know if they're going to be able to rush the passer. I don't know how well they're going to be stopping the run up front. I think that the big question mark on this defense is that defensive line, and I'm very curious to see kind of how they get the most out of this group this season.
Yeah, Bill, I think this is definitely going to be a committee approach when it comes to, just a defensive line as a whole. And especially at the edge rusher position, where DeMarcus Walker was the biggest guy that they brought to a defense that finished with 20 sacks last season, right? So I think it helps, though, that the Bears did get a lot of guys that can play on the interior, because I think that will help out guys like Walker, who can also play inside. Dominique Robinson, who we didn't see much of after week 1 of last season, where he got Trey Lance a couple times. And Travis Gibson and Rasheem Green. So it's definitely going to be a committee approach. And I think that, bodes well for guys like Javon Dexter, who was the guy at Florida. We talked to his defensive line coach, who said that we couldn't really take him out at times because he was our best player. So he was gassed. Now having more of a rotation inside with Justin Jones, Andrew Billings, and, Zach Pickens, that's going to give him, just fresher legs as the game goes on. So if he's able to, provide penetration up the middle, that should, in theory, help out whoever's on the edge. But it's definitely, for me, going to be, as of right now, as the roster stands, it has to be a committee approach, because you don't have the guy at any one of these positions as of right now. So you need to rely. They always talk about, whether you talk to Alan Williams, Travis Smith, the defensive line coach, the players themselves, it's 4 as 1. Is how they kind of put it, where, this whole unit's working as one unit to kind of get to the quarterback or stop the run, whatever it may be. But that's how the Bears are going to have to play if they want to be successful with their front 4, especially just knowing that, you do have 2 rookies in there. They're going to be asked to do a lot. And you do have a guy like Dominic Robinson, who I think is still learning the whole position in general, but now going to year 2 should have more experience. Travis Gibson, after talking to the defensive line coach, Travis Smith, he's going to be the guy that plays on both sides, which is something different that he didn't do last year when Robert Quinn was here for a time. But for a majority of that year, I believe he played what would be on the left side. So now you're going to see a guy like Travis Gibson play on both sides. So I think for the Bears, they're trying to find, one, the best groupings that work. But as a game goes on, Bill, you're going to see units just swarm in and out to where hopefully they can have fresh legs, get different types of guys out there with maybe different combinations to try to ultimately get the one goal is getting to the quarterback. And it doesn't always have to be sacks, but at least affecting the play in some kind of way. But that's got to be the goal for the Bears right now. And like you, I do expect the Bears to bring in somebody else, and we'll see what happens in terms of, veterans that may get cut during training camp. Yeah, I'm sure every single site that writes about the Bears right now has that Yannick Ngakoue article already queued up, ready to go out as soon as it's made. But yeah, I expect them to definitely sign somebody else.
All right, last one for you here before I let you go. Obviously it's early here, but it's still at this point, I think we can kind of make this determination. For you, what is a successful season this year? When we fast forward to January 2024, when you look back and go, this was a good season for the Bears, kind of what's the threshold? Is it playoffs, non-playoffs? Is there a win total? Is it more specifically just Justin Fields development? Where are you in terms of, what the Bears need to accomplish this season for it to be successful?
I think, Bill, for me, when I look at that, what is successful for the Bears, I think it's just knowing that Justin Fields is your franchise quarterback, because every move they've made has been about him. When you trade out of your spot to move back one slot, to take a guy like Darnell Wright, that's made because you want to see Justin Fields upright this season. When you trade the number 1 overall pick, you want DJ Moore involved in that, just so you can see what he can be at his best version as a passer. And you bring in a guy like Robert Tonyan and more running backs, and Luke Getsy's still here in year 2 as an offensive coordinator. If the Bears, maybe they just missed out on the playoffs, but Justin Fields is that guy, that's a successful season in my eyes, because this roster, it is far and ways better than what it was last year. But is it ready to compete for a playoff spot? If the stars align, they're humming as an offense, the defense is able to get to the quarterback, they're still creating some turnovers, then they easily could be in that contention, especially in a weak NFC. But I think for me, it all comes back to seeing how Justin Fields can play. If you know that he is a dynamic playmaker through the air in addition to his legs, then you did what you had to do to at least see that play out. Because obviously before the Bears traded that number 1 overall pick, it's what are the Bears going to even consider one of these, top quarterbacks in the draft? They made that decision, traded it away. They need to see what's in Justin Fields. And by the end of this season, if we know that answer, you feel definitive that Justin Fields is your guy moving forward. Now you have those 2 first-round draft picks that you talked about earlier. You could build around Justin Fields even more, whether that's revamping the defense or giving him another playmaker on offense. You have that luxury, and you finally figured out, the most important position in all of sports. So I think that is going to be the most important part. And I don't say that Justin Fields doesn't have to be perfect by any means, but you just need to know he passed the eye test. Maybe he throws just for over 3,000 passing yards and has 700-800 on the ground again. Who knows, somewhere around those lines. But he just looks like that guy. That, I think, is a successful season in my eyes. And if they can make the playoffs too, of course, that would be the nice cherry on top. But I think Justin Fields showing that he is your guy moving forward, that's going to make the 2023 season a successful one.
I can't disagree with that at all. All right. He is at Nicholas Moreano on Twitter. Make sure you check him out there. And of course, CHGO Bears coverage, the beat writer for CHGO. Make sure you check them out on YouTube and all their daily podcasts. They're churn out content, not just Bears, but Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Bulls, anything you want. Chicago Sports CHGO has you covered. Nick, thanks for so much time. Really enjoyed the conversation. Glad we could finally make this work, and enjoy your summer.
Appreciate it, Bill. Thank you for having me.